So 2025 might have just started, but that means the 2025 Kings Island season is just around the corner. Did you know that several Kings Island rides are celebrating milestone anniversaries in 2025? Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Tops is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are, and that is who we care about.
Yeah, so let's start off by thanking our Prestige Pass members. So Prestige Pass members are YouTube members that are at the highest level. That's the Prestige level. I want to start off by thanking Aaron Bort, 330T, Logan Lipper, Brian Hauser, Lil Mac 21, sorry, Miss Mandy 1983, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes, and Steve Hornick. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics by being Prestige YouTube members. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the content, exclusive content, members only live streams, and you're really supporting the show. Let's be honest here. Oh yeah, and some tiers may get some free stuff. But Prestige people who just signed up on our launch, you're coming up on that. We're gonna have to get those out to you. But again, link in the description. And thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics.
Yeah, so Ryan, you mentioned a lot of different attractions celebrating anniversaries this year. It's always one of my favorite things is kind of recognizing these anniversaries. When I worked there, I like doing that. They always made for good blog features, social features. But we'll start from the beginning that this is the 55th anniversary of the TAP Broadcasting Company breaking ground to begin construction of Kings Island. That began on June 15th of 1970.
Yeah, June 15th, 1970. So that was just under 2 years before the park opened. How quickly do you think they could build a park the size of Kings Island nowadays? I imagine it's not that fast anymore.
It probably would take about 3 years.
Yeah. So this was June 15th of 1970, about 20 months from groundbreaking, shovel in the ground to welcoming guests. That's impressive, I think.
Yeah, exactly. With that, now part of it though that helped was moving those existing rides from Coney to Kings Island. So I mean that they got a little bit of a head start there because they already had the rides in place to get the park started. So everything wasn't, it was from scratch, but it wasn't from scratch.
No, I know that, but I honestly also think that if you and I were going to build an amusement park, probably the most difficult part wouldn't be building the monster and the scrambler and stuff like that. It would be building buildings, infrastructure, walkways. Like that would probably be the difficult part, don't you think?
Yeah, that would be the difficult part. A lot of people think that the first structures to be built at Kings Island, where they think the tower, the fountain, maybe the racer, but it was the landscaping buildings, where the first
Really?
ones completed. Yeah. So they knew that they had to, have a place for that, and that was where it all started. Was with those landscaping buildings.
Was the first ride completed was the Enchanted Voyage? Is that correct?
No, no. They started working in 1970 on things like the tower and the racer. So the racer was one of the first things really constructed within the park, grounds
Right.
that guests could go to. With that, the building for the Enchanted Voyage, was under construction. That part was, the building part was completed before the racer was done, but the infrastructure, the different props and the animatronics and that were in there, that, wasn't done, before the racer.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I bet the building went up rather quickly.
Yes.
The ride
Yeah, the building. Yeah, the
mechanism.
building was done. Yeah, the building was done way in advance. Before a lot of the other thing. Before you even saw some of the rides coming over from Coney. In the fall of 1971, but just to get all the animatronics, and everything in there working, that didn't come until late 71, early 72 before that was all ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing though is like you think like they have all the time in the world to do this, but it's also people that are pulled in a million different directions, and it's like, oh, that character isn't working yet. Oh, but I've got to finish the brake run on the racer, whatever. But I have seen photos of the racer with just dirt around it. It looked kind of like Stricker's Grove,
Oh, yeah.
with just the racer that's essentially in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
All
I've
right.
got a lot of construction photos of the racer. I always like looking back at those.
Yeah. Cool. Next up, my first ever Kings Island ride, Shake, Rattle, and Roll. So that's going to turn 50.
That was your first ride?
That was my first ever Kings Island ride.
Yeah, that'll turn 50 this year. You know, when that first opened, that was a big deal. In
Hmm.
1975, you know, you had your media out to ride this. You know, it was big news at the time. I mean, you weren't building all these record-breaking roller coasters in the early 70s. So whenever a flat ride came in, it was exciting. This also came in at the same time that the Zodiac was also added that year.
Yeah, I knew it came as a ride package. Now, this was opened as the Troika the first year, correct?
Correct.
Just for the first year. Do you? I don't remember if I've asked you this on the show or not, but was the name changed because of like a Coney Mall retheme the second year, or was it like they couldn't come up with a name they were happy with? Because for those who don't know, Troika is the manufacturer's name for this model.
Yeah, that well, when they announced it, it had, you know, that name, but Shake Around and Roll, you know, quickly became the name.
So, but I think the park map in 75 had
Yeah.
Troika on it.
Yeah, it did
Was
have
it?
Troika. Yeah, because they didn't know yet that was going to be the, you know, they didn't name rides well, you know, in advance like they do now. I mean, sometimes it was right up until the park was ready to open. Oh, let's just call it this, you know, kind of a thing. But I think the name's appropriate for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. I mean, I guess granted, it was my first Kings Island ride, so this is ingrained in me. But I could totally see this ride as a shake. I mean, it's got three arms: shake, rattle, and roll.
Hmm.
Troika definitely. I don't know what Troika means, but this definitely looks like whatever that is too.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with a three with Troika.
It's probably something in like a like German or whatever.
I
But
really, you know, in recent years too, with the lighting package that's on this now, I mean, it looks great at night, doesn't it?
I'm so glad that they did that and that they still. The cool part is like you want to upgrade it. So like this definitely looks better than when it was green and it had like, those neon bulbs or whatever in it. But we still have Monster as of this recording that has bulbs in it. And I think there's something to be said about the actual bulbs that feels like old Americana,
Hmm.
you know. But I love this lighting package. I really do. So happy 50th anniversary, Troika.
And that's a big deal because a lot of flat rides, you know, in a lot of places don't last 50 years anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, they do it at Kennywood, they do it at Hershey Park, they do it at Knoebels, you know, Dorney Park, but a lot of other parks they don't.
Yeah. Speaking of 50th anniversary,
We've got Evil Knievel, 1975. He successfully jumped his motorcycle over 14 Greyhound buses. Uh, that set a new world record. The jump was nationally televised by ABC TV's Whitewater Sports. It held the highest rating in the show's history. I think when you talk about events in Kings Island's history, this one has to. If it's not number one, it's no worse than number two or three in terms of the you know the top events in Kings Island's history.
I think we did an episode that we might have done two. We might have done like top five events in Kings Island history, but also we've probably done like the top five things that made Kings Island,
Mhm.
a worldwide recognized name, or at least a nationwide recognized name. This is certainly one of them. I think the Beast took the number one spot, of course. Uh, but this was always built into the lore. This was before I was born. But I remember knowing even as like a little kid that Evil Knievel had jumped the Greyhound buses at Kings Island.
Yeah, this was a
Now,
big deal. I remember, you know, it was always in the news. Cincinnati Post, Cincinnati Enquirer, three local TV stations. You know, they were talking about this for a couple of months leading up to the jump. They were showing, you know, photos of where the jump was going to go. They had, you know, renderings of what the ramp was going to look like. And then when they started building it, you know, you saw those kind of features. The buses coming in, you saw those features. You had different interviews with Evil Knievel talking about it and how he was, you know, nervous. He had never gone that far. And then years later, you know, well, not years later, but 1981, the PR person at the time, Ruth Voss, she was there
mm,
for Knievel's jump. I started talking to her about it. You know, this is only 6 or 7 years later, but you know, just hearing her stories of dealing with Evil Knievel and all his demands, and that was always interesting. So even though I watched it on TV, like millions of others did, It was still one of those events, and just talking to some of the people that were around at that time. Jerry Niederhelman, security, he had a lot of stories about Evil Knievel, and but sitting down with Ruth Voss and just having her talk about it, where she took them and what they did, and when she knew she was going to get Evil Knievel, how she started planning the tour around, the tri-state, to get them on every TV station, that she could in Indianapolis and Columbus and Lexington, Louisville, and West Virginia, how she did all of those kind of things. So, yeah, that was one of my, even though I wasn't there in person, I think when I think about Kings Island history, it's one of the things that comes to mind for me is the Knievel jump. But 50 years ago.
50 years ago, yeah. Don't worry, we're gonna get into some of these anniversaries that even make me feel old at this point, so don't feel bad. Yeah, it's the best thing I can equate it to, and, I wasn't alive to watch it on TV, was the Robbie Knievel thing, um, and I'm wondering if, uh, 20 years from now, parents are gonna tell their kids, like, Robbie Knievel jumped Coke Zero trucks in the Kings Island parking lot. Um, I just hope that other people had as much fun that day as I did, you
Yeah, I think
know?
had I not had all those conversations with Ruth Voss, I wouldn't have been as prepared as I was to handle Robbie Knievel
Mhm.
and what that was going to entail. But I kind of replicated a lot of what she did, and we got Robbie and all those kind of shows too throughout the region, and a little easier. I didn't have to personally take him to West Virginia. We brought in the satellite truck, and we were able to do it on property, but we got those same kind of hits and that. But just how evil was as a person, I was prepared for the worst with Robbie. It wasn't as bad as I might have been anticipating. He was challenging, at times, but a lot of fun, a lot of fun. But again, 50 years ago. One of the things, though, Ryan, when sometimes everybody says it sucks getting old, and that, but one of the great things about getting as old as I am now is that I was fortunate enough to be around, and remember all these things that happened at Kings Island, from the 1972 season, on through today, that I either saw it on TV like I did with Knievel, or I witnessed it in person by going to the park. So that's one of the advantages of being as old as I am today.
I feel the same way about a lot of stuff, and you're gonna hear me lament about it here coming up with a couple of these things, but, the, I saw somebody post on Facebook that, yeah, I don't know Lord of the Rings well enough to know what the character was, but
Mhm.
somebody named their kid after a character from Lord of the Rings, and, I guess the person who's, like, my age or so said, like, "Oh, that's a cool name, like, did your parents name you after, like, a character or something?" And they were like, "Yeah, some movie that came out in, like, the 1900s." It was Lord of the Rings, so
Yeah.
so we were both born in the 1900s, which was last century, Don, last century. Okay,
What's next?
what's next is, Whitewater Canyon. So, what year's 40th anniversary?
Yep.
So, I'm a little older than Whitewater Canyon, but to me, as far as visiting the park is concerned, this has always been there. But what do you remember from the ride when it was new?
Well, I remember the, announcement for it. I remember seeing all the different construction, pictures that were in the news media. I was able to come out to the park during the winter and the spring before it opened, to look at some of the construction. That was one of the courtesies, that Ruth Voss provided, both for me and Carl Eichelman, was to be able to come out and check out the construction, get some photos and that. I didn't, take photos of it. Carl did, and he was able to make copies and that for me. But just to see it kind of coming to life, um, I had reservations about writing it. When it opened, I didn't feel like being soaked the whole day.
Mhm.
But I remember being there on media day, and they gave us these raincoats, rain jackets, with the hoods and that to wear. Uh, but rode it over 30 times on media day and just had a blast with it. But that summer in 1984, especially early on in the year, the park gave me some Whitewater Canyon t-shirts, and they said, can you wear this? There would be different I was approaching the 5,000th ride that year on the racer, and at different points leading up to that, they would have different media out to do, lead up stories on me, and they were, would ask, "Hey, can you wear the Whitewater Canyon T-shirt for that picture that they're going to take of you on the racer, or that video shot of you on the racer to promote the new ride?" So those are things I kind of remember about it, but just a lot of fun, and it's never the same experience twice.
That
So
is
that was
true.
something that was unique for me, was that no matter how many times you did it, it always, was felt like a different kind of experience. You either got, you know, somebody else might have got more soaked than you did, or the water came up differently, or you hit different spots, along it and spun a different way or something. So it's always fun. It's always fun. It's an adventure.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna make a joke while you were talking. I was thinking like I'm gonna make a joke that this should be open for Winterfest. Then I thought about it, and this trout would be an awesome walkthrough lake display.
Oh, it would.
Cedar Point used I don't know if they do anymore, but they used to use theirs for a haunt. I
It
think
would
if
be
they
good
needed a
for a
spot
corn
for
stalk. Yeah, they can make this like a corn stalker's kind of a maze for haunt. Make it, long, but make it real immersive in that. Yeah, I mean, other parks do it with their flume or not flume rides, but your raft rides like this.
because I imagine doing probably within the trail itself, like there are probably years where they have to do some like major construction or whatever, like every couple decades or whatever. But for the most part, they probably have to do a lot of work on the boats and a lot of work on the pumps, all of which is not done on site. They pull them out. So I think that would be a cool idea. Came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Now back in the '80s, I didn't, I had the black curly hair and stuff like that, so it usually wasn't good to get that all wet during the early part of the day. But now it wouldn't be a problem.
Right. It would just strip right off you. Next up is okay. This is where I start to feel old. 20th anniversary of Backlot Stunt Coaster.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been around that long. It it's a fun ride. I'm glad that they didn't give up on it early. It's sometimes rides like this, they get their 10 years and maybe 15 years, and then they move on to something else in that spot. And we saw over the years, Six Flags has been quick to pull the trigger on some rides, not giving them that long of a shelf life. But I'm glad it's still around. It's a great kind of intermediate coaster, for families, and that maybe they're not big enough yet to ride Diamondback or Orion, but it's fun.
I think it would be if they wanted to do a quote unquote new attraction on a year where they don't have new attraction money in the budget, this retheming this might be something really cool because they've got all those indoor sections and so on, and they could do some pretty cool
Mhm.
stuff, and all the really expensive stuff is already done. So if they had like a million and a half, they could retheme this and almost call it a new immersive attraction.
Yeah, I remember it storming on media day for this. We were able to get in and
Mhm.
get a couple of rides in. Then over Jukebox Diner was under the different name, to kind of tie in with all the stuff then. But that was a place that everybody was sitting down, ready to eat their lunch, and here come the rain and the thunder and all that. But it cleared up in time for us to still get a few more rides in to close out the event.
The thing I remember, I do remember the storms, and it's kind of funny because I don't know if this was a Paramount thing or if this is just kind of like how life works outside of like super duper liability and so on. But I remember there being lightning, and then it's like, okay, it looks good, let's launch, and then lightning, and it's like, okay, shut it down again. So it wasn't like, oh, wait 25 minutes and it has to be, because they did not follow that on media day. They needed to get those trains out.
Yeah, needed to get
So
the trains out, needed to get the media, all their shots, and for them to be able to get their rides in and be able to talk to everybody they needed to.
well, and I think that's just a lesson on error on the side of caution, because your chances of lightning striking a ride and it affecting you is incredibly small, but it's a risk you shouldn't take, and that's
Yeah.
why they
Now,
do it.
this is the first ride, though, I remember, you were just starting to get into where the fan sites were developing
Yes. Yeah.
and social media was coming about. But the first ride that I can remember, people, talking about it doesn't look like the animation.
Yes.
So before that, you never heard those kind of things. Oh, it doesn't look like the rendering, doesn't look like the animation. Nobody ever talked about, if you go back and you look at some of the renderings and that for the vortex, today everybody be like, oh, there's not as many trees, that kind of thing would be the topic of conversation on a place like KI Central. If you compare the renderings to what it actually looked like when it opened. But this was the first one I remember that, being part of the conversation is what it wasn't, based on the renderings and the animation video.
Right, and I think rightfully so, though, to be fair, because the animation video looked nothing like what we got. The coaster itself, the path looked exactly like it, but what they kind of sold with the animation was it kind of reminded me of like the Willy Wonka experience in like Sweden, where these people bought like $40 tickets and some dude set up like houseplants and like cardboard cutout stuff. Like what they had was good, but that was not nearly to the level of the stuff that was in the animation. And
No,
I invite you to look up. So if you ride a tiny job stunt, sorry, if you ride Backlot stunt coaster now, it is a shell of what it was as a tie-in job as far as the effects and stuff like that. So try to find like a POV from 2005, 2006, sometime around then. Then look up the animation. That's on YouTube as well. It's probably on KI Central's YouTube. And you'll see what we mean. Like the animation set unrealistic expectations for this ride. It ended up fun. It ended up, probably doing what it needed to do as far as an intermediary ride and stuff. But there was stuff that they talked about. They did remember, bouncing downstairs and all that. That
Mhm.
just never happened.
No.
So
The other thing about this that, when it first opened, it didn't get, as much love as it should have from Kings Island guests was because of what it replaced.
sure,
The antique cars were removed to make way for this. The Flying Eagles were removed, said to be to make way for this, but opening day came for this ride, and everybody saw that they didn't have to remove Flying Eagles; it could still have existed in the same exact spot. So I think there was a little bit of disappointment that those two rides left. This one came in. You didn't have to lose the Flying Eagles, so all of that was part of the discussion when this opened in 2005.
certainly. Okay.
Next, we have the 20th anniversary, 20 years now, that
Mm.
Grader's Ice Cream has been at Kings Island.
I remember this building being vacant for quite a while. Do you, or am I misremembering
No, it
that?
had years where it was vacant. It's kind of in an odd spot.
But Graders clearly makes it work because
They do make it work. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that Grader's ice cream was a big thing growing up as a kid. To be able to go get that, and then to have it at Kings Island, was kind of that added bonus. I'm at Kings Island a lot, so now I get Grader's ice cream every day that I go. So it was a good addition.
I think so too. I'm not a big ice cream fan, but if I have to choose ice cream, I choose Graders.
Yeah,
Okay.
can't go wrong with it.
Next stop, Planet Snoop. 15
15
years.
years, yeah.
Yeah.
The Kings Island's then award-winning kids area, received that fresh new look. It was a timeless classic in 2010 to bring in the Peanuts gang. I knew for a couple years this was likely going to happen. It was going to replace Nickelodeon because they had the Peanuts characters at Cedar Point, Valley Fair, Knott's Berry Farm. They were very popular, characters at those parks. So I knew that they would work at Kings Island. I wasn't worried about, you saw the social media chatter at that time, and KI Central, everybody saying nobody knows who the Peanuts characters are, but they do, they do, and it works, and they're lovable characters, and I think, when they freshened up that area, and the different, everything getting repainted in that, um, it worked.
Yeah. I mean, I was probably one who was originally in the camp of like, these are not relevant characters, but it was a difficult argument to make even then because I remember thinking that it doesn't really matter because the Nickelodeon stuff was very much expired intellectual property. And the Hanna-Barbera stuff, even when I was a kid, I didn't know who, like, Quick Draw McGee, or
Mhm.
I'm just
McGraw,
making them name.
Nick
Yeah, yeah,
McGraw,
sure.
yeah.
But, like, I didn't know who the characters were even as a little kid. So if they could get this for a good deal, I figured that's what was gonna happen. And, I'm sure that they paid dearly for the license, but at the same time, they're they've got the logo, they've got the characters, they've got the intellectual property, and so on. Um, what's going to be interesting over the next 5 years or so is Peanuts, Looney Tunes, DC Comics. Like, where are we going to be with this?
Yep. There might be room for them all.
There might be room for them all. And honestly, I think that the DC stuff should be more adult stuff. Like, they can't really make an argument for DC as a kids area because the appeal of DC nowadays, I think, is for teenagers and beyond. But as far as Looney Tunes versus Peanuts, I definitely think that Peanuts is more relevant.
Yeah, I do think down the road in the not too distant future, you're going to see Action Zone rethemed to DC.
It's got to be, like, we always talk about how it's a concrete jungle, and I honestly think that that's a problem, but that's a good start to make it look like Gotham.
Yeah,
I mean, it really is, and they can do some really creative stuff with it. So in the same vein as this, they also Scooby-Doo and the Haunted Castles became Boo Blasters on Boo Hill.
yeah, it's a fun ride.
It's fine. I remember thinking that it was better than Scooby-Doo, but I also, going back to the Italian Job thing, I had some disdain for Scooby-Doo because of what it replaced too.
Yes.
But I remember thinking, like, at least the last couple scenes, when granted they're just plastic skeletons, but at least it was something practical rather than cardboard cutouts, which
Hmm.
I hate that so many rides rely on that, on like centerpieces and stuff like that. But I think that Boo Blaster again. I think that its time is coming where it's time to replace it with something better. I just hope that they don't do it on a year when it's like a cheap year and they can overlay it. I hope it's a year where there's a good amount of investment and they can foster it and have like a product that they're proud of rather than Boo Blasters, but now it's Snoopy or whatever,
Right.
you know?
I agree with that. Do it right or don't do it at all.
Yeah. Here's another one that makes me feel old. Franklin's Flyers, Snoopy Soapbox Racer. I'm so used to saying that. Franklin's Flyers and Snoopy's Space Buggy celebrates 10 years at Kings Island. They debuted in Franklin's Flyers debuted in 2015 as Woodstock's Gliders. These two rides received media attention coast to coast, including stories in the New York Times, New York Post, and the Boston Globe.
Yeah, that was one of those things that I was really proud of. It was the park's. I sent out a release that said the park opens its 43rd anniversary season, on this date,
Mhm.
and media picked that up. So it's always smart to do something like that. But I knew this year for the 43rd anniversary is, and I named these two rides in there and detailed them and mentioned in there about Woodstock gliders coming in. It kind of brings back a ride that was lost, with the Flying Eagles, and it got the coverage everywhere. Like you mentioned, the New York Times, New York Post, Boston Globe, Houston Chronicle, um, San Antonio Express, Los Angeles Times. I mean, it was everywhere. With that story, the Associated Press had picked that up, and we were at a one of our summits that we had with the communications team, and we were talking about it. And Matt, we met, mentioned all the coverage that this got, and he also talked about some other things that were going on that we were getting attention for at Kings Island. And he was telling some of the people, you don't need a big roller coaster to get coverage. You can find different ways to do things. And then I kind of mentioned that that in terms of being important to the guests and things like that, just bringing back a ride with that nostalgia and everything with this, maybe it'll garner some votes for the Golden Ticket Award for Best New Ride because of what it means to the Kings Island guests. And then they called me aside after we were having our lunch, and they were like, please don't push that out there that way. So, we need Fury to win that golden ticket. Don't take votes away from it with this. So kind of, you can dial it down a little bit in terms of making sure the whole country knows about this ride.
Which one were they pushing for the golden ticket?
Fury.
Oh, Fury 325, which did end
Fury
up winning the
325.
golden
Yeah, it
ticket.
did win the gold, but they were, thinking, okay, he just got this thing in all these newspapers for these rides. And we need everyone to be talking about Fury 325. So just kind of you got it. You got it out there. You don't have to keep pushing that out there.
Right, yeah. And well, another feather in the cap of the whole thing of the golden tickets and USA Today top 10 and all that does matter, especially if you
It
win,
does.
you know.
It
All
does.
right. Next up is the big guy, I think. Yeah, Orion, 5 years old. Little baby.
Yep. Yep. It's been a quick 5 years. For Orion, you've also got Meteor Canteen also, turning 5 this year, but those 5 years have gone fast.
It certainly has. Now, I remember kind of another mixed reaction, and we talked about uh, like the discussion seemed to be all around: is it a giga? Is it not a giga? You had originally had the discussion internally where it's like, let's not worry about whether or not it's a giga. Let's talk about how fast you go and what the great ride experience is going to be, which we both agreed might have actually changed the narrative a little bit. Um, so this opened in 2020. That was a busy year for a lot of people watching Netflix and so on at home. So it was eligible for the 2021 Golden Ticket Awards, uh, but it did not win Best New Ride.
No, I think it finished like 5th or 6th.
Yeah. So on one hand, there was a lot of competition because it's 2 years worth of rides. On the other hand, it was a lot more opportunity for people to ride it that could vote for it. So
Yeah, it just never got off to the start that it should have, and the focus was on things that it shouldn't have been. Whether it was a giga, whether it wasn't a giga, it should have just been about the ride experience. And if it had been just about that, I think that would have helped. But also going into it, and we talked about the teaser campaign. If it had been a little bit different to create a different kind of chatter, like Mystic Timbers had
yeah.
going into it, that would have helped, build the anticipation and the excitement for its opening. So there was a lot of different things that could have happened, should have happened, but here we are now, 5 years later, and the ride ranked 43rd for best steel coaster in the 2024 Golden Ticket Awards, and I don't think that's what they envisioned when they decided to put in this coaster. Is that it would be ranked 43rd just 4 years later.
I don't. Here's the thing: if it's ranked 43rd, you can point the blame at people and situations and things or whatever. But I think the thing that kind of highlights when people say that it's too similar to Diamondback or that's not as good as Diamondback is, where does Diamondback rank? 9th, I think.
It was up there.
Yeah, it was up in the top 10. So you've got a $30 million Giga Coaster and it's in the bottom of the barrel. While Diamondback, which has not gotten any particular attention from the park in 10 years or so at this point, is ranking in the top 10. So I honestly think that the again, Orion, if you put that at almost any other park, it blows everything out of the water. I just think it was a terrible choice for Kings Island.
It was just too close to what you already had.
It was too similar to Diamondback. Diamondback was a pretty beloved ride, so if you were going to put something in that was similar, you would have to blow it away. And at that point, like if you blew it away, are you not just amortizing Diamondback at that point? Like, wouldn't Diamondback have gotten a 10 or 15-minute wait every day? Because the thing that I've noticed is, on the busiest days, it seems like Diamondback might have slightly less of a line. I don't know. It's to me, I just feel like this was $30 million that could have been used in many other ways that would have made a lot more sense.
I remember walking the track of Orion after it was constructed, and just kind of visualizing in my head, having ridden lots of roller coasters, what the experience was going to be like at certain points of the ride. And what I came away with was that I don't think this ride's going to deliver the kind of airtime that you get on Diamondback.
Yeah.
And that's for steel coasters especially, that's one of everyone's favorites, favorite components is that airtime that you get. And I remember talking to the one of the engineers at Kings Island at the time, and I just said, might just be me, based on my ride experience, but I'm not seeing too many places where you get, a lot of airtime. They're like, oh no, you're right. You're going to be stapled to the seat for the most part on this ride. So I think that's one of the detractors with it too, is Diamondback has the superior airtime.
I think that's true. And, my understanding has always been, at least from an enthusiast standpoint, and probably from an industry standpoint, is that a hypercoaster is concentrated on airtime while a giga coaster is concentrated on the speed. So
Speed,
this
right?
certainly goes fast. So that's why every other giga coaster is so low to the ground after the first hill, because you can experience the speed when you're whipping around and stuff. I mean, look at I-305 or whatever they're calling it today, or Millennium Force or any of those. But for this one, you go down the first hill and then you go up another hill. That's a hyper coaster right there. So I think that it's, as far as a giga is concerned, it's poorly designed. It's designed. It really is the world's tallest hyper, and I don't mean that in derogatory, like it's not 300 feet, but I'm saying like this is a really really tall coaster that's really fast, that has the features and the aspects of a hyper coaster. It's concentrated on airtime. It's got the big, long, drawn out stuff rather than the quick turns and tight stuff. And I think that's to its detriment.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fun ride, but it's not I wouldn't put it in the great ride category.
No, I don't think that. I don't think it really sells tickets. Because I think when they put this in, they thought it was going to be like the Beast, where people come from all around to try to ride this, and I just
Yeah,
it's
it didn't become Millennium Force Fury 325. It wasn't, to that level in terms of the experience that it delivered.
right, and then and I think that it's also a bit of a lesson in the whole, like, you have to choose your route, because in Evan Ponstingle's book, A Ride Through Time, which is the history of Kings Island, they said that they intentionally made this so it was more family friendly. And it's like, so basically you took a ride that's a high thrill ride and you made it less high thrill, therefore the people that like high thrills are disappointed, and you made it more family friendly. And I don't think anybody's going to be like, oh, it's not 300 feet, okay Billy, let's get on. I think that was like the strangest thought process ever. um, and I'm almost wondering if the way that it read is not what the person that was saying it meant, you know? Nonetheless, it's a great ride. And again, if you put this at any other park, it's going to blow away
Yeah,
anything they have.
it'd be the marquee attraction just about anywhere else.
But it was just kind of a poor pick. And, if it was intended for a great America, um, then this probably would have been a fantastic ride there. But they put it at Kings Island, and it was hasty and it wasn't well thought out. And, it's kind of just like with the dark ride. It's like, I almost wish that when it comes to like a signature ride, I'd rather have waited a few more years and gotten the appropriate one, rather than getting it now and getting something that's intended for another park and appropriate for another park, but copied and pasted into Kings Island, and not necessarily appropriate for them. And I think that there's every bit of data in the world that backs up what I'm saying. You know,
Yeah. But
cool.
that's our anniversaries for 2025. And, I would hope that these rides get their due, especially like a shake around and roll being 50. You want guests to know that that's happening, when they're at the park, but you look at the rides, like even this year that we're celebrating anniversaries, the Beast was 45, you had some t-shirts in the gift shop, but other than that, if you didn't go in the store, you wouldn't have known on any given day you were riding the Beast that it was 45,
Right.
unless you knew the history. There wasn't any kind of celebration, any kind of signage, nothing like that, making it a big deal. So some of these rides, shake, round, and roll, let's call that out, and let people know that it's 50. Let people know that Backlot Stone Coaster is 20. Don't make it to where they have to read if they don't see a social post by the park in April or something like that, that they don't know. Let's make more aware. I'm all for making awareness about anniversary. Some parks do that very well.
I agree, and I have a feeling that if you were still there, the shake, rattle, and roll thing would be in the Boston Globe and the New York Times, and that's not going to happen now, obviously. But I think that you would have been able to position that story where, because I remember, God, is this a blog you wrote where the carousel, which was built in 1926, which by the way, next year's the 100th year. So if you guys screw that one up, I don't know what to tell you. When it was like maybe it was you, and but I definitely saw it posted on KIC where it was like in 1926, Carousel debuted, and this like gas was this price, and the
Mhm.
Ottoman Empire still existed, and stuff like
Right,
that. So it
right.
just
Yeah,
shows
yeah, I
you like,
did. Yeah, I did that. I wrote down what the price of things. I did a story on that about what things cost when the Grand Carousel debuted, and but yeah, you mentioned that being 100 next year.
hmm,
That is a huge, huge deal. You know, you have to make that a summer long, year long celebration for that ride. But then you got to understand and know what to do to make that happen. How do you pull that off? Um, one of the things you could do is have at the beginning of the year or Memorial Day weekend or something, just have, and Knobles does this very well, is you have like a band organ rally, and you invite
hmm.
all them to come in, and that could be a big deal. You got to make a spectacle out of it, but Willie, I don't know.
They could bring in the original ride crew from 1926.
Yeah, I'm
Or the
sure they're still out
carvers that
there.
built the horses. That'd be funny if there's a few of them left, and it's like, "Come on, give it one more whirl." They're like 115 years old or
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
well, yeah, I guess they would be about 115 because assuming that they were like 14, 15 when they worked at Coney Island.
You'd have to be to remember it even. You'd have to be like 110 if you
Yeah,
worked there. You wrote it, in 1926, but that was a long time ago. But there's other rides next year along with the carousel that are going to be celebrating anniversaries, and to me, that was always fun. It's a time to always rekindle the memories of those rides. Remembering your first rides on it, remembering um, the announcements that they did announcing that these attractions were coming. It all comes back when you kind of focus in on those anniversary years.
yeah, we'll see what happens. Um, Don, we're on Facebook.
We have a Facebook group now. Tower Topics is the name of the group. We'd love for you to join. It's a place that we would like Kings Island fans of Tower Topics to kind of all come together to talk about their favorite Kings Island memories, uh, talk about their day at the park, a great place to ask questions about things that, you don't know about the park, or maybe you're not sure how this works with your season pass, anything like that. We want the group to be the place to go, the place where the Kings Island fan lives. And that's the Tower Topics Facebook group.
It'll be a group by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. So we're gonna try to keep the messaging out of it.
Yes, yeah, it
No,
won't be, yeah, no messaging or anything like that. It's just a place to just kind of share your love for Kings Island. As simple as that. Uh, in a place, we have we'll promote our upcoming podcast. To talk about what we talked about. We'll also use it as an opportunity to we'll let you help us decide what we're doing for future episodes. If you have a story idea you want us to do, we'd love to hear your ideas on that. But it's just really a communication hub, place for all the Kings Island fans to come together as one big happy family.
one big happy family. Absolutely. We'll be right back with the listener questions. All right, first listener question. Steve F. from Felicity, Ohio. He said, I visited Kings Island on December 29th, and from the parking lot, it doesn't look like much progress has been made with the new water slide. I refuse to call it a water coaster since you have to carry your raft up the steps. I didn't know that was a qualifier, but I touche, my friend. Do you think it will be ready for opening Memorial Day weekend, or will it follow the recent trend of opening mid-June?
Well, it's only 500 something feet long, so it shouldn't take that long to put it together. Um, I think it'd take a little bit more time to do the refurbishing what they're doing with that kids area than it will be to put this together. It should come together quickly. I wouldn't think it's going to miss being ready to go by Memorial Day.
I think it'll be open for Memorial Day, but I don't think all of Soak City will be ready for Memorial Day. I think that maybe that pool or that the this. Oh, by the way, So I was looking at the permits and stuff, and I think they filed for Subway, and Subway, it looks like it's going to become a blue ice cream stand. That's breaking news for you. Take that
Okay.
one to the bank. But yeah, I don't think that it'll be ready, especially the ride certainly will, because the ride, that's easy, and that's the responsibility of the manufacturer. And um, it seems like they made the decision early enough to be able to do it. And as Don said, it's 550 feet long. Um, but as far as like if they add a restroom or whatever, I don't think that all of it's going to be ready. I think that you're looking at mid-June for some of the peripheral stuff.
Okay.
Maybe the blue ice cream stand will be ready.
All right.
You're up,
Next
Don.
question. Yeah. Lori P. from Batavia, Ohio. She says, do you think Kings Island will add some theming elements to the queue for Snoopy Soapbox Racers? It would be great to have something to look at or keep people entertained while waiting to ride, similar to what Holiday World did with Good Gravy.
Nope.
I don't think so. No, I
No.
think it is what it is.
After you get past year one, the chance every once in a while you have it where they ordered something and it doesn't show up till later. Like one thing that comes to mind is like the horse on the train route.
Hmm.
But generally speaking, once Snoopy Soapbox Racers had its initial push, you're never going to hear about it again. They consider it unmarketable for some reason. So there's no return on investment by theming that queue more
Yeah, we
because they
never
can't.
saw during the season any updates on, that it had reached certain rider
Right.
milestones or anything like that. But I do think it is tough because it's one train operation, and there are days that wait time, got up to be like an hour. And when you got young kids, that's a long time to not have anything to look at or, keep you entertained. So I think that, especially when you experience Good Gravy at Holiday World, you would like to see a little bit more there with that.
And if only there was like a cartoon or something they could play in the queue that would entertain the kids. Can you think
Yeah,
of
but
anything, Don? I can't.
no, but
You
what would they
know,
play? What cartoon would be
like
available? What would fit?
Barney or wait, Teletubbies or Rocco's Modern Life. Maybe they could play some episodes of Victorious. Oh wait, no. How about some Snoopy stuff? That's a hard one. Put some TVs in there and show. They have a soundtrack, like an audio track, that's really good, and I think that they don't want to cover that up. But it's a foolish decision because kids don't appreciate that. They should show
No.
Snoopy episodes on repeat with the audio, make them relevant in terms of like don't show just like one clip or whatever. Show full episodes. Partner with Apple TV and show the new ones.
Yeah.
They did something in Camp Snoopy where they debuted like the first episode of the new uh, Snoopy stuff, but you have the intellectual property. It's all right there. The technology's there. Throw in the $40 for the extra TVs to go back there so the kids can watch. And while you're at it, throw in a little bit more shade back there too, because it gets really hot during the
Yeah.
summer.
But I'd like to see something that, kind of ties in more, kind of making it more of a story driven attraction. And you're going through the queue and, leading up to when you get onto the ride, you're being told this story.
I agree, but I don't expect that. I'm saying like the easiest possible thing to do is probably what they're going to do
TV monitors.
to monitors that's showing intellectual property that they didn't create is probably a good route for them. But yeah, I'd love to see like fiberglass sculpts of them working like a pit crew on cars and stuff. Like that would be brilliant, and that would be easy to dream up and probably not terribly expensive to do. But you have what you have. That's what it is. All right, next listener question. Tony D from Western Hills, Ohio said, when I first heard about this podcast, it was by asking a guy wearing a Tower Topics t-shirt in line for the Beast what Tower Topics even was. My initial thought was, this is probably two Thuzies who live in their parents' basement, but I had to check it out. What I discovered was two guys with incredible insight about Kings Island who aren't afraid to share their honest takes, regardless of what the park might think. That kind of authenticity is refreshing, and I've learned so much about Kings Island from the podcast. My question is, when did the Beast switch from 4 bench cars to 3 bench cars? Don, you're up.
After the 1981 season.
And why don't you explain a little bit why? You can probably do it better than me.
Well, just, yeah, I mean, it was the trains, the weight of the trains, were kind of tearing apart the track. It was just a thing that, let's lighten the trains a little bit by removing a car. Let's have it to where it maneuvers around the course a little bit easier, makes those turns a little bit easier. They didn't think it was going to impact capacity that much, so you went from 40 riders down to 36. So you're just talking 4 riders per train. So they didn't really see that it was going to impact that too much. So that's what the decision was, to cut off a car in each, or cut off a seat in each one of the cars.
I wonder if that could be done in today's world. Like, I wonder if PTC would allow it, or if they'd just have to get new trains.
It'd be able to be done.
You think so? Because I've never heard of anybody else doing that.
Well, nobody else had to do it.
Right.
That's the thing. So I think that's why you hadn't heard about it, because nobody had to do it. But it really, if it had continued with the 4 bench trains, I mean, that ride would have torn apart, and it would have lasted now, going on its 46th year.
Cool. Next question. You're up.
I am up. Okay, we have Kyle M from Cincinnati. He says, when Kings Island announces this family thrill attraction for 2026, do you think they'll host an in-park announcement like they did for Diamondback, Windseeker, Banshee, Woodstock Gliders, Mystic Timbers, Kings Mills Antigatos, and Orion? Or will they stick to the lazy approach of the past few years of just slapping it on social media and deleting any negative comments?
I would say that there is, I don't want to say 1 in a million, but there is a 1 in a billion chance that they'll do something in the park. So I'm saying there's a chance.
There's a chance, yes.
It's not going to
No,
happen.
I mean,
They're gonna.
yeah, I mean, I think you do these attractions for your guests, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's always good when you can involve your guests in these announcements and have them be a part of it. You don't always have to do it at night, like, that were done for Mystic Timbers and Orion and Banshee. I mean, Diamondback was during the day, the Antigatos was during the day, Windseeker was during the day. I mean, so you can do it at any time. But I think it's important to include your guest when you do these. And if I'm the park, I would want to announce whatever is going to be new for 2026, at a time when the guests can be a part of it. Whether you do that in the Fest House, the Kings Island Theater, you don't have to, have some big staged area outside in the park. You can do it in one of those venues. But to me, I would, I think it'd be great if the guests could be part of the experience. And I think you
I
get a little
agree.
bit better sentiment that way too. When they're part of it, they can sense, the excitement's a little bit higher. When it's just something that's put out there on social media, tends to lead to a little bit more negative sentiment right off the bat.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there is some very positive things to doing it in park, though. For one, you talk about the
Well, I'll give you
positive
an
sentiment.
example. Okay, when
Mhm,
Windseeker was announced, same ride going into Cedar Point. Cedar Point announced it at like 3 o'clock in the morning on Facebook,
mhm.
and all the negative, they built it up. Make sure you get the announcement and everything, and everybody was negative about it. The news media, they see it. All their morning news is filled with, Cedar Point announced Windseeker, and fans aren't happy, and they're pulling different comments and things, putting it up there. And then a couple days later, Kings Island announces Windseeker. They do it in the Fest House, and all the news stories are positive. They're interviewing Kings Island guests. They're all talking about how excited they are about this new attraction, how it seems like it'd be fun to be up 301 feet in the air, spinning around like that. So, same ride, 2 different approaches on how to do it. One got real positive feedback, the other one got real negative feedback. And that was something that, Cedar Fair leadership took note of.
Mhm.
They started asking questions. Why is it so negative here? Why did Kings Island, why was it so positive down there? And I remember there was some concern, before we announced it, like, we're going to get ripped. Look at Cedar Point, how they got ripped. And I said, no, it's because they put it on social media, where that's kind of, it leads itself to that. And all it takes is a couple of people to start off that way. Then it just builds, people pile on. But by doing it this way, they're going to be excited to be part of it. And they're going to go to their social media and talk about how positive it was. And it's by the time we put it on our social media after announcing it, everybody's happy with it. And it worked.
I think that there's a certain, if you look at like Apple and stuff when they make their announcements, they do it as a presentation rather than just dropping stuff on their website most of the time for major stuff. And part of it is because not only do they have to tell you about the product, they have to
Mhm.
they have to tell you why you want it.
Yeah.
And I think part of it with somebody standing up there saying like you're going to be flying through the air 300 feet is way different from an animation that shows the same thing. So I think that's the
Or
first
just a
one.
still photo, right?
I mean, but I rue that. Well, and the second one before I get to that is you're going to have an announcement of an announcement regardless. Kings Island's going to announce at 10 a.m. on Friday on their Facebook what the new attraction is, or Kings Island is going to announce at 10 a.m. on Saturday at the park what their new attraction is. One of which is a call to action to go to the park. The other one's a call to action to stay home and watch it on Facebook. So I think you have to make that choice. But with this family thrill thing, assuming that it's the Zamperla one that we've been talking about, and once again, we don't know if that's it or not. Um, they're going to have to sell people on why they want this, why this is appropriate and stuff.
Mhm.
Because um, if it's not clearly for kids or clearly for like way on the other end of the spectrum, then they're going to get torn up. And this is right there in the middle. It might be appropriate for Kings Island, but they need to be able to communicate that to their guests in order for that to be appropriate. And I
Yeah.
think that if they do something with the theme and all that stuff, then it's quite possible that that would take off and people would be excited for it. But if they just drop it on social, and especially if it's just like the animation that the manufacturer supplies, that is not going to be a positive sentiment. It's really, really going to hurt them.
Yeah, I think anytime that you can involve your guests, you do it, because that's who
Ex-
you're doing it for.
Right. Now let's talk about Tower Topics t-shirts.
Tower Topics T-shirts. Okay, they're available in a Carolina blue, any size that you need. $22. It includes shipping. If you're interested in one, go to our X, which is Tower_Topics, and send us a direct message, or go to my email and just drop me a line at donhelbig@themeparksbydon.com, and I'll send you the QR code. And once the transaction goes through, it is just a matter of days before you get your shirt. We love seeing these shirts around the park, and we've seen them in other places. I saw them at Reds games. I saw them at Bengal games. I've seen them at Jungle gyms. Um, uh, the Ace European coaster trip. There's some people wearing them on that trip. So it's great to see that everyone out there supporting the show like you have, and we greatly appreciate that.
My favorite was I was at Epcot and somebody in Tower Topics t-shirt came up and said, "Hey Ryan, Tower Topics," and just kept walking. And it's like I
At
was gonna,
Epcot, yeah.
yeah, at Epcot, I was gonna say like, "Oh, like, are you from?" I was gonna have a conversation with this person, but they were with their group. They just kept on walking. Very cool. $22 includes shipping. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.